Hey guys, Max here. I have rented out, gosh, it's almost 5 years now, renting out rooms in my house. I have had a 100% rent paid, not always on time though, ratio. Here are the three biggest mistakes I've made that you can avoid when renting out a room. So here we go. First one is renting out a room in the first place. Do you have a lifestyle that allows for this? Now, when I say lifestyle, I mean, do you have the wherewithal to give up having access to your bathroom all the time, perhaps, the kitchen, the living space? You have to really ask questions. Am I able to share and do it without complaint? Because the reality is when you have roommates, it's really difficult to complain about them being in the bathroom. The reality is this. When you have roommates, you have to sacrifice things. And does your lifestyle allow for that? That's a really important question to ask. And then even more than that, I have had to deal with interpersonal problems having more than one roommate. I've had to break up nearly a fist fight. It was probably about this close to being a fist fight. I've had to break that up. It's really not fun. So those are some of the conflicts that you may have to deal with, especially if you're renting to fellas. Ladies, probably more covert operation when it comes to conflict, but guys, it's straight up, they want to fight each other. I've had that many times, so are you ready for that? That is the question. I remember having some friends of mine, it was friend of a friend actually, and they were renting out 3 rooms, one to a young woman, 2 to some random guys they met on Craigslist or Facebook or whatever it was. They didn't know them, and they themselves had 2 young daughters, like a 2nd grader and a 7th grader, something like that. Now, you can do whatever the heck you want. It's your life. I just know if I had 2 young daughters, I would not be bringing any strange men, or anybody for that matter, strange into the house. But that's their life. So think about it. Do you have the lifestyle that allows for something like this? If not, then you should not rent out rooms. It's really that simple. If you can't say a resounding, yes, I have the right lifestyle for it, then the reality is you shouldn't rent out rooms. It's really that simple. Here's the solution, though. Create a lifestyle that allows you to rent out rooms, earn an extra income on the home you own. Now, if you have a mortgage, let's say it's $1,000 a month, you rent out 2 rooms at $350 a piece, there's $700. Now your actual cost to live in the house is $300 plus whatever utilities they are. That's a really good deal if you ask me. But it takes sacrifice. I moved into an RV for 4 years. The first 4 years that I'm doing this, I lived in a freaking RV on my property. Yes, I bought an RV for $3,000. The RV paid for itself in about 4 months, which was really nice. But are you willing to make that sacrifice? See, it's really hot living in an RV. Thankfully, I had air conditioning. Thankfully, I did. But it takes sacrifice to create financial success and then financial freedom. It doesn't happen just overnight, and it doesn't happen just because you will it to. You have to make actual sacrifices, which seems to be a taboo thing in today's culture. Second mistake, renting to the wrong person. You have to ask the right questions when you're talking to someone for the first time. The reality is if you have your sleep schedule messed with or they have their sleep schedule messed with, it's going to make for a very, very not fun experience at home. And the reality is when you come home, you want it to be an oasis, a time away from the stresses of the rest of the world. At least that's how I look at it. I want to come home and have a stress-free environment, or at least as close to stress-free as possible. So when people have very conflicting sleeping schedules, I one time had a roommate, shame on me, again, for not asking the questions, that worked a graveyard shift. So he was awake all night, pretty much, until the wee hours in the morning and then slept all day. Well, that's kind of hard when you have a normal job and you work during the normal daylight hours like most people do. So really ask those questions. Those questions are super important. The last thing you want is your sleep schedule messed up or their sleep schedule messed up. When sleep deprivation is in the question, that makes for not very much fun at all. And then obviously, or even worse than a single person that's not the right person is a couple. You don't want to deal with their familial or couple relationship issues. My goodness, just never. One of my big rules, never rent to a couple, ever. I do have a solution though. Do not do research on questions. I've created, I think it's a couple dozen questions to ask somebody when you first talk to them. Go to this URL, maxmymoney.org/rentyourroom, all spelled out, rent your room. Go to it. You'll hit a landing page in just a moment. It'll show the landing page. You will be able to have access to all the roommate questions, as also some other resources as well. Type your email in, and have access to it for free. Then you'll be able to see all these questions. Why are you looking for a new place? Do you smoke? Are you 420 friendly? Can you put down a deposit? All these really, really important questions that you want to ask somebody. And then you also have access to all the other resources as well. So go ahead and go to that URL right now. But you want to have these questions answered. You don't want to be in the dark on things. You want to know, do they smoke? Can they pay the deposit? Can they pay the rent? All these really basic questions, and some of the more in-depth ones, like sleeping schedule, what you do on the weekends, family nearby, things like that. All those things are really, really important, and I created a guide for that. So go download the guide, get access to the resources so you can ask the right questions, because the last thing you want is the wrong person in your house. It's not fun kicking someone out of your own house. At some point, I'll tell the story about how I had to kick, shall we say, an unwilling party out of the house. Stay tuned for that video. All right, so you have completed the following. You have figured out your lifestyle is the correct lifestyle to rent out rooms. Check. Good job. Second one, have you found the right person? If you have, awesome. Now, this is the one that I see most people stumble on, is not having the correct paperwork in order. Number 3 is when you do not have a lease or roommate agreement set up. I don't care if it's your brother. I don't care if it's your nephew. I don't care if it's your significant other. I don't care if it's somebody off Craigslist or Facebook. You need to have things in writing. Things in writing will keep everybody on the same page. When you have something in writing and people actually sign it, it makes it real. It makes it legitimate. It doesn't just, oh yeah, pay me on the first. Or yeah, pay me when you can. Don't ever use that word first off. Don't ever say pay me when you can. Pay me on the first. Pay me on the first. The first when the rent is due. That's the fact. Always have things in writing. Things in writing makes things a hell of a lot easier for you in the long run. Just in case you had to involve an attorney, I hope you never have to do that. I have not had to do that quite yet, although I've had to reference people, hey, we signed this. Remember on this date when we signed this lease together? Yeah, that right there? Yeah, let's follow through on that. And how can we work on following through on that? You just want recourse, and you want to be able to show someone, hey, you signed this. Let's follow through on this. Keep everything on the up and up, everything legal, of course, follow all the legals of your locality, but you don't want to have any questions about when the rent is due, what the process is when they move out or they're evicted, hopefully not evicted, but what the process is when they move out, when they're going to get their deposit back. All these stipulations you want to make sure are written down and everyone signs so everyone's on the same page. Because the last thing you want is somebody who doesn't know what's going on and is not on the same page and thinks they can pay the rent on the 15th because that's when their check comes in. Well, news, rent is due on the 1st. Look at the contract. Have a contract. I do have a solution though. You don't have to create your own lease agreement. I've created one. This is a really, really good one. I've used it for, I don't know, probably about 3 dozen roommates. If you go to the same URL, maxmymoney.org/rent-your-room, you'll have access to it, and you'll go to it right here. It's just a simple lease agreement. It goes over the stipulations, what day, everyone's responsibilities, the rental, everything, and everyone signs. Make sure everyone signs. You want to make sure everyone's on the same page. The last thing you want is people not on the same page. You want everybody on the same page. Do I stress that enough? Everyone needs to know what's going on, especially you and especially them. Because the reality is this: I've had people who it's their first time ever being in a new place as opposed to mom and dad's house, so they have no idea how this thing works. You want to make sure they understand in a very simple way. Yes, it's 3 or 4 pages long, but if you read through it, there's no legalese, and it's actually pretty easy to understand. Make sure everyone knows what's happening. Well, those are mistakes I've made, and hopefully you don't have to make them anymore. Make sure to go to the resources page. I will give you all 4 of those resources, which are really, really helpful. You will get the lease agreement, the roommate questions, the roommate agreement, which is kind of just house rules, and then the room ad. Make sure to download those. You will have access to all of them forever, and you can use them for your landlording and roommate lording adventures. Make sure to comment and subscribe below. I will see you guys in the next one, and happy landlording.